Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 88 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we're going to hook up our geode processing setup and then plan for dealing with slag. Enjoy. We probably want to pick something as close to the source as possible, which is right here. So what does this look like in place? Well, unfortunately, it fits right here, but covers up that mine. Although I guess it would be flipped the wrong way here, where the ore would actually be coming down. We could just place it right down here. Kind of gets in the way of that line of belt there. Or we can place it up. That's certainly going to be a big open space. This was all packed very tightly together just because we had a very square set of machines and it all worked out pretty well. But at this point, the machines are going to be looking more organic and aren't going to be quite so square. So it's really not that big a deal to have unused space again. And the geodes don't need to go out that far. They stop being produced right here, so they could be sent up this direction really at any time. I mean, this seems to fit pretty well. I mean, it most certainly will have to be moved when the base gets expanded, but that's basically the case for everything. That if this base expands, then we're going to have more processing machines expanding to the left, so we would want to keep this space open. Or if we research the next tier of ore sorting, then it would expand up this way, take up all this space, and then these ore sorter machines would have to be placed even higher. So technically, from a sense of not wanting to move machines, or moving the least amount of machines possible, this is kind of danger zone right there, where this thing will eventually have to move if this setup is ever to be expanded upon. Where, if it was placed here, it actually wouldn't have to move. Get rid of that flashing, let the factory catch up a bit. So in that sense, it's probably okay to put it here. Move it down a little bit, not to cover up that ore, just in case it needs to get used. And it does kind of conveniently fit in this spot between the tracks and those pipes right there. I'm kind of worried that those belts right there are going to slice right through this, but really, it's fine to have belts turn. I wasn't really expecting that the stone processing would happen right next door without any sort of turning the belt or anything at all. And actually, I'm thinking that the stone processing might take up a lot more space than this, but we have a lot of space around here. Down here. We can even do some landfill. So I'm probably thinking about this too much. And just putting it in a decent spot will probably be just fine. So that said, let's place it right here. Another thing worth mentioning is I don't think the base is big enough to transport all of this stuff by train or drones or something. I think it would be unnecessary transportation to put this, you know, somewhere way out here where we know it's not going to get in the way. Just because that's going to force trains to have to go all the way out there. And really, this isn't that big of a base compared to how big they can get. So why create a logistics problem to solve if we can just place it right where the processing needs to happen and not have a problem in the first place? Okay, we're pretty close here. Let's hook it up. Now we need to kind of stitch all these separate systems in here. Well, let's get mineralized water. We won't be hooked up to the main base yet, but that's okay. Eventually all this stuff will be. But for now, we can kind of grab this mineralized water right here and take it down the way. Looks like it's just a little misaligned here. Basically, we need to get it hooked up to this tank, but after this top-up valve. It's kind of a difficult spot to get into. It's kind of an example of, it would have been great if these were on the other side. But it's already kind of been placed. I don't know how possible that would be to switch everything around without just rebuilding the entire thing. Well, we can try to pipe it in through here. Like, can we go underground this way? Probably. There we go. Mineralized water's coming in. And it all got sucked in. So it looks like the left and the right side machines are not hooked into each other. So we need to get that good. Let's see. Actually, we can just kind of keep this going. There we go. Now it's kind of going into that tank a little bit. Let's see, what would be the easiest way to connect to the left and the right here? I think we're just going to have to put up with the zigzag. So mineralized water is hooked up. This will generate its own crushed stone, so that's not going to be a problem. But we do need to output the extra crushed stone and mix that up with everything else. Let's see, this is totally a temporary measure. But we'll just hook this up right here and just send the stone over there, and then once, because that warehouse is totally going to move when we have a better place to put it. But for now, let's wire this up. It's going to be kind of a long wire path here, but there we go. Basically, we want this tank to be at least properly filled. And in this case, it should be at 80%. So let's say that this tank has to be at least, let's say 50%. It has to be at least halfway full to allow the stone to escape this silo. Otherwise, they need to stay there to provide something for these liquefiers to use. But if this is at least 80%, then it means everything's happening fine, and it can send it down its way. And that'll actually work because these loaders will always be on, so even if this one is open sending resources down, still 2/3 of it is going to be given priority to go to liquefiers. So this should work just fine. So we say mineralized water has to be greater than 10,000 for this to turn on, and it's not turning on because we have no mineralized water. But regardless, let's just run this temporary belt here, just to send the excess into this warehouse here, which you can't see because there's no power poles. Probably should have one just so you can easily see what the quantity is. Okay, we needed to hook up this purified water as well. And luckily, purified water is something we use an absolute ton of. But the problem is that each one of these machines is kind of set up to its own independent purified water setup. So it's actually not that efficient to send purified water to each of these, because that would kind of connect these networks. I mean, we could use one-way valves and whatnot, but that's a lot of pipe and valves. And really, it's just a little bit of purified water. It's not that valuable. There may be a better spot to put it. For example, to make sulfuric acid, we need purified water. So that actually might have a use somewhere. But for now, to keep things simple, let's just get rid of it. So we process that, which gives us 126 purified water. Will it let us void purified water? I don't know if I've ever tried. Yes, it will. And 0.8. This is going to be temporary. I'm fairly confident we're going to find somewhere to send this water. But for now, we just want this setup to be operable. So we don't need it to be, don't need it to be super complicated. And just plop it right there because it's easy. Also, we have the sulfur, which we need to deliver. And it's also on the other side, so it is right here. So we're just going to send a belt right up here and send it right in this strongbox. Again, it's temporary. Just like once we processed crushed stone, this will move to wherever stone processing is happening. Whenever we're doing acid, this box will move to wherever we're doing it, so it doesn't really matter where it goes or what the belts look like to make that happen. So I'm going to be crude about it and just kind of come in through the top here. And we'll figure it out later. We've got a lot of separate systems that all need to be in place before this actually starts working. So you don't want to get too attached to everything looking perfect the first time around, because it's just not going to. So don't even care. We just want as much of this setup to work as possible so we can check it for bugs and then move on to the next task and worry about it later. So just go straight through. I think we just needed to get some coal up here. And luckily there's a road down here we can use. Let's pick the closer spot right there. So let's do this. And it's probably a very small amount of inserters for this. 0.4. So inserter going in, but we don't want any of the overrides. And coming down here, and now we need a depot. And luckily, I think we already have a supply depot right here for coal. So this will be super easy to set up. Let's grab one drone. I have the feeling a single drone will be more than enough for all of this. We'll put 2 inserters, one on each side, have them go together, and then combine. Okay, let's request some coal. And just the one truck ought to do it, since it'll hold 500 coal. And we're consuming it at 1 coal a second. That's what, like 9 minutes that the truck will have to do a round trip? It sounds like it could do that easily. And we also need to make some filter frames to start this whole process. Let's just put them on the inside and we'll get rid of them later. So it requires an iron and a steel. I think we're super low on iron. Yep. And I don't know how fast these work. Let's just put a red inserter because that's what we have. And this is all purely temporary, so it doesn't matter how we have it set up. Let's get some iron and some more steel. Okay, there's the fuel truck. Looks like the base is caught up pretty well, so we can keep researching. Maybe that was the last thing on that line. We're getting pretty close to being done with the green science pack upgrades as well. Okay, let's put a bunch of stuff in here. About 4 stacks of each. Then let's let this run until there's, let's say, 200 of these coal filters ready to go. So coal filter has to be less than 200 to turn on. Set this one as well. So now we need to deliver some coal, which should be on the way. And we can see that operating. But while we're waiting, that's most of these things set up. We don't have any sulfuric acid piped in, but there's kind of no point to doing that. I mean, it's not like it's that far away. The closest is right here in our Bobmodium mine, which is getting mighty small. Might have to start prospecting. So it's really not that big a deal to move it over here. But the question is why even bother? Because, okay, it's hooked up, but what do we do with this mineral sludge? Nothing, because we're not going to have that part of this process set up until later. And the reason why it's kind of a waste to set up the sulfuric acid here is because we're also going to do acid processing. So we're going to rebuild our sulfuric acid processing somewhere over here, because this is where the majority of the sulfur is going to be, and the other acids too. So it won't even have to travel all the way out here. So it's kind of like you have to look at the benefits of doing something. It's like, what's the benefit of taking the base's sulfuric acid and piping it in here? And there's no benefit. Like, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to accomplish anything. So we'll wait until that's more relevant. Where's that drone at? That is a long drive, actually, when you look at it, where it has to do all of that. Well, if we need more drones, we need more drones. But we'll go up, and we'll just drive over this. That's okay. Then we can empty these once, all these find their home. So I kind of want to wait. So I want this process to load up so we can see it at full blast. Because you can see it's running just one color right now. Well, these colors are all not lined up properly. That's for sure. I see, because it does a bit of a zigzag. So this one should be cyan. Okay, everything should be color matched. Seems like it. Let's let that keep emptying out. So did the coal make it? Yep. So that's going to take a little while to seed. But it doesn't really matter since those machines aren't going to run at all. And it looks like our A signal is working properly. Or when you look at all those numbers, like, well, how many geodes is that? Well, it's 11,000. Easy enough. Okay, let's hook up all the sides and see what happens. Well, it's green. Well, and as expected, this kind of stopped because there's nothing for it to do. And the stone went in there. But it's not going out because we actually need to hook up water too. And that's going to run until basically that fills up. Although I do see a potential problem. If it's completely full of crystal dust, then there will be no available stone to make it in here. But this isn't the only method that the factory has to produce mineralized water, so fingers crossed that it works out okay. Can't do a filter on any of those, fortunately. I wonder if that requires a logistics container. It might. But won't have one this big, so we'll have to wait. Alright, well, we need to get water in here. Water is being pulled off over here, which we can send up. But the question is how much water do we need? 450. Which is kind of a lot. So let's just pull it in from the coast, and we've already got a pipe running up here. So it would be nice to run it next to it to make life a little cleaner and straighter. Okay, that emptied. So now we can permanently connect to the geodes to where they need to go. Can't quite see. Need to clear out some trees. Let's see, will this work? Yes. There we go. Now we're producing our mineralized water. But yeah, I can see a problem where this is going to completely fill up. Whoa. Oh, that needs to be set properly. I was wondering why that was suddenly starting to work. Well, mineralized water is correct, so... yeah, this might have some hiccups. But eventually, it can't keep pulling this crystal dust forever. Sooner or later, it's going to get some stone. So we'll just have to see how it works in the long run. So that's looking pretty good. It's basically as far as we can take it without going to the next step. And it looks like we're just about filled up on these coal filters too. And we're just about out of resources as well. Well, this one side's done. So we can just pick everything relevant up. And it looks like that side's done as well. And there we go. Let's put the extra filters in here. And now that's seated and ready to go. There we go. Put these in the wrong machines. There we go. Okay, it's time for the next step. So the next thing down the priority list is slag. So what does slag go into? Well, as it turns out, not much. But it's still three very important things. It can be crushed down into crushed stone if we need crushed stone for something. And we could make concrete out of it by adding slag to cement. And actually, this is the Angel's method of making concrete. So this is more efficient. Where previously, we were turning stone into sand, and that sand plus stone bricks into concrete. We can now do it the Angel's way of adding a silicon ore and some lime to make a cement, and then that cement gets added with slag and water to make concrete. And then we make concrete from liquid concrete. But most importantly is to make concrete bricks, we need that liquid concrete, and concrete bricks are the next tier up after clay bricks as far as making the next tier of all these various machines. So it's something we definitely need to do. So let's grab that. We can make all those necessary things. And finally, slag goes into slag slurry, which can be filtered into mineral sludge, which is the same thing that we are producing with our geodes. So when you think about those methods, what is the priority here? Well, luckily it's fairly simple, where we don't want to produce any crushed stone unless our base is low on crushed stone, because there are some things that crushed stone can do that slag cannot. So we want to keep a small amount of crushed stone on hands at all times, but if that ever gets too low, we'll want to crush it, and we have something very similar happening right here. Up here, these are set to logic conditions to where if stone is very low, they crush the slag to try their best, and since there's nothing in here, they're just crushing everything. Concrete is a fairly high priority thing that if we need it, we need it, but it's not like we're going to be dumping a whole bunch of it into stuff right now. So we can just probably process it on demand. So this is really the only thing that has any priority, where the crushed stone will only happen if we need it. Concrete will always happen if we need it. And slag slurry is basically a dump. Now we do need that slag slurry to make catalyst, so it is fairly important. But ultimately, it's less important than crushing stone and making concrete. So we can just make the slag slurry the dump for all of this. So we have 3 different processes which we need to hook up. And they're all kind of separate from each other. Let's build each one independently and then figure out where they need to go. Well, we can look at our predictions here to find out the worst case scenario is that we need to handle 75 slag per second. So what do we do with all of that? Well, phosphorus sorting requires 60 crushed stone per second. So if we have no crushed stone, we're going to at least need to provide it for that. So that might be a good jumping off point for how much crushed stone should we be able to produce. So we need 60 crushed stone per second, which is 30 slag, and that's 15 ore crushers. And also, you know, part of this is that we also need to get those 3 ore sorting facilities in there. But they actually produce slag rather than require it, so this is probably better to put near the crushed stone processing. To handle the slag crushing side of it, looks like 15 ore crushers will work. So now let's make some concrete. Well, the final goal is making concrete bricks. And stone bricks will come from the stone, the crushed stone processing of it, so we won't worry about that. But we need to make liquid concrete from slag and cement and water. It's hard to say, but we'd want like a balanced number of all of these, so we'll just have to find it all out. But you see, it requires very little slag here, so this really shouldn't be much of a problem. But we need some cement from silicon and lime. And lime we're going to produce from limestone, which is going to require a fuel. Charcoal's probably a pretty good thing to leave that on. Limestone is made from light mud water. And we gotta follow this down the path. And these are all very small numbers here. Well, how much concrete are we actually producing right now anyway? I have the feeling it's an entire belt. Or 30 per second. So let's see what that looks like. So we have 40 assembly machines. From 16 to, hoo boy, 96 powder mixers. So this is actually going to require 24 lime a second, which is quite a bit. This is a lot of production. The only annoying thing is the carbon dioxide, but we do use that for growing plastic and whatnot, so we do have applications for it. I just didn't want to have to pipe it down there, but I think we don't have a choice. If we're producing 300 per second of it, that might actually overload the factory. We might have to vent it. We'll have to see. And actually, this is going to require 24 silicon ore per second. I don't even think we can produce 24 silicon ore per second. Well, almost. 22.5. Okay. Well, that's close enough to the ratio where I think we can just leave it. But, man, this whole thing is going to be quite large. Okay, so we have an idea of that. It requires 12 slag per second, which isn't too bad. That requires 30. We can do both of these things at full power, and we'll still have slag left over. But nonetheless, now we need to calculate the mineral sludge from slag slurry. Then we make slag slurry from slag. Set this to input, and then set the input to, I believe it was 75 per second. So this assumes that 100% of the factory's output needs to be dumped. So that will require 20 liquefiers, 40 filtration units, and lots of sulfuric acid. We'll just have to hope that we can produce this. Let's see, we need to take care of this sulfuric wastewater, similar to how we did up here. So 7 hydro plants, which will create lots of mineralized water, some sulfur. But it looks like it's set to the requirements as opposed to the output. So the output is 600. There we go. So we will need 330 purified water. And we'll need to handle all these coal filters. And that's 4 assembly machines. Okay, that's not too crazy. So we essentially have 3 different setups here. Where should we put them? Well, slag is all the way up there. And yeah, if we're going to leave this space open, it means that this area right here is kind of no-go. That we would want to put it maybe in here between these two. That's kind of a weird spot to use. So it would be nice to fill it with something. Or even down here, honestly. It should be kind of close to this stuff, because they're all going to be piped in together. So we'll have to see how big all these setups are. And that's it for this episode. In the next one, we're going to build the setups to process slag and make concrete. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.